We are live! Woohoo! Hello, hello, my beautiful friends. It's Izabela Lundberg, the World Messenger, and I have a very special guest joining me from New York City, Carrie Lee McClelland. Sorry, I'm like, how you pronounce your last name, Carrie? I'm
The
going.
last name is McClelland. Yes.
Tongue
I
twister for
usually
me.
go by so
But I wanted to just to say, Carrie, it's absolute pleasure to have you here, join me from New York City, and having a chance and opportunity. And I was joking, and I still joke, and I actually have a lot of truth in that joke. What happens when you mix radio personality with the leadership personality? I think you guys are up to for treat, and let's see what this is all about. This is going to be very dynamic session, so buckle up, champions, because we are going and sharing quite a bit of what is going on. So, Carrie, if you don't mind, please share just a little bit about your background. Are you a native New Yorker? And I know you're in New York right now, and I would love to hear how is for you to be the radio personality in the midst of the craziness with obviously your work at iHeartRadio and everything you do virtually in order to make things happen. So please. And we have
it's interesting to bring that up because we have had a crazy year, and I'm very fortunate to work for a company that has the foresight to see that this communication is a absolute necessity. And I have been with the company for, it's gone through several generations, but 15 years total now. And one of the things that we have learned is that it early on, this became an utter necessity for people. And I think the key with that was when people were starting to be locked down and having no concept of how to manage it. That familiar voice on the radio, that familiar voice in a commercial, that familiar voice that people were hearing every day, reporting the news, reporting the traffic, reporting the weather, was bringing a level of comfort. Now, the last time I saw something like this, and I've got goosebumps ready to talk about it, was around 9/11. And when
wow.
you have, yeah, when you have an entire culture pulled together by a commonality, what happens is that all of a sudden necessity takes on a different face. And it's evolving now as everybody coping with the process of the pandemic and lockdown and illness and healing and loss and change. And it's evolving. And I think one of the things that you and I have been attracted to each other about is the evolution of leadership, and especially discussing feminine leadership. And when I watch the work that you're doing, and I know that what I'm committed to doing is, it's not that we're selecting women only, but we've mastered being women. We're very good at it. And so we know how to put that information out. And so what you'll find is people like you and I are very much like a lot of women out there. We've learned to do a lot of things really well. And we've taken certain careers, and that has turned into our bread and butter. And thankfully, it is, because it's helping us to sustain other things. And because we want to learn and communicate and offer different things, then we cultivate other areas as well. And one of the things that I did years ago after I left television was I put energy back into my education, and I went back to school for psychology and neurolinguistic programming and humanistic psychology and integral theory. And I know you understand this being in education yourself. And it was one of the best things I ever did, because all of a sudden, whatever that spark was that hadn't been truly lit yet, I realized over time that I could do a lot to help a lot of people with the tools that I was cultivating. And that's what that's starting to turn into now. And so we've got these several different directions that we can go, but there's so much here that I could say. I don't want to data dump on you, so I guess I will leave it to you what the direction you want to take it next.
Oh, that is amazing. I love how amazing, versatile, and how many things you can really go through to really show a holistic approach to what it takes to be empowered woman and lead with that positive, energetic force forward that we absolutely and necessarily we need. We have a car saying hello to us, and we'll be commenting and sharing as the others get engaged. And please free to ask us any questions because we're here together to learn and tap into amazing, amazing background that Carrie has. And I love that you brought up that you were being actually in TV and broadcasting world for so many years. And obviously, you definitely have your own on the radio, I heart radio segments that you also do and cultivate and build audience over these many, many years. But I love what you mentioned that you were seeking more and how you became an expert in NLP and integral leadership, which actually, believe it or not, it's a several groups and avenues, even on clubhouses I were mentioning earlier, where the amazing discussions are done. So I will definitely make sure that you're part of it, and I'll let you know of the details, because integral leadership is so essential for everything that we need to do to move forward. But with that in mind, do you mind just sharing how has NLP mastery served you well as a woman and benefits so with yourself as well with others that you serve?
It's so interesting that you asked that. When I decided to go to school for that, now that's a very interesting story, and I hate to harken back to this because it was a very tragic time culturally, but right around 9/11, I lost my job on TV. That was like literally 3 days before. And it was like this strange alignment that happened in my life. And I had gone to the gym the next morning, and a friend of mine said to me, if you could do anything in the world that wasn't broadcasting, what would it be? I said, I wanted to speak to people and I wanted to help people. And the next thing you know, she says, I want you to call this place. I want you to talk to them about going to learn about coaching. I had no idea what coaching was. And so I go and I talked to this guy who owned this coaching school and ended up signing up immediately for a program because it sounded like, okay, what else am I going to do? And signed up for this program. And the first day there, I was late. I couldn't find the place. This is before GPS, and so I couldn't find the place. And
you're forgiven because it's in New York. Oh my goodness! It's like how you navigate New York without GPS. Oh my God, I don't understand.
It was one of those things you just couldn't find. And this woman pulls up, and she's got a green Volkswagen Beetle, and I look at her, and something felt familiar about her. I run in, I check in. I wasn't as late as I thought I would be. Everything started. And this woman walks in, and she was one of the teachers. And she was teaching parts of NLP. And I thought, boy, that's interesting. I ended up having a massive conversation with her. And she offered to teach me the program. So I signed up for that. And she said, when I first started NLP, she said, you will never think the same way about anything in the world again after you finish this program.
Wow.
And okay. And she was because everything that I used to think, I used to be, that I used to focus on was coming from a very different perspective. And it opened my mind, it opened my heart, it informed my spiritual practice, it informed every part of my life. And it triggered a level of creativity with my intellect that I had never had before. And you're talking about integral leadership. Then after I was finished with that, started focusing on integral theory and integral leadership. And they kind of like go hand in hand because there's a lot of elements at play in that. So,
and do you mind just explain a little bit from your perspective what is NLP and integral leadership? Because I'm sure a lot of people are curious and they don't have no idea. You and I are very familiar with not only acronym but also with the concepts. But it will be just great to depict a little bit so others can really see why it's such a huge value.
Okay, so NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. Let's break it down into the simplest way we can. It means your words frame your world. Now, there's a lot to it, but it basically, what is it? John Bandler and Grinder out in San Francisco back in the 70s figured this out, and they used it as part of their PhD program and then turned it into this program, neurolinguistic programming. Humanistic neurolinguistic psychology is the psychology element which supports all of that. NLP can be used in business, NLP can be used in therapy, NLP can be used in hypnosis. It can be used in so many different ways. I'm sure it's used in advertising, but it's understanding how people's worldviews are affected by their language. And for me, I always thought, all right, how we talk to ourselves is huge. And so for me as a woman, this started to transform me because, you know, you walk around with belief systems your entire life, be it enculturated, be it what you've been told by family, friends, kids in school, whatever, telling you you're not good enough because you're not this, that, and the other thing. And if you don't know yourself, you're never going to question that. And that's when I really started to question it. It's like, wait a minute, that's not me. That's their projection on me. And I started to know myself very deeply, and that led into integral theory. Now, integral theory, it's complex, but it's not. Integral theory is the theory of everything once it's integrated. Okay, now I have just simplified that like to the max, but
I love it.
We have to, right?
Yes, absolutely. People are so terrified and they detach and they don't understand it's going over their head, but they don't realize that they're actually doing on a daily basis, but not consciously as much as they should, right? And for you being as a communicator and using your chairs wisely, not only because how many millions of people are listening to your news and how many people depend on how you're going to deliver on your energy, on your tone, of your voice color, as well as the choice of the words and your intentions behind it. That really brings so much forward.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you bring that up because you mentioned intention. And we hear this a lot. It's a buzzword that you can hear anywhere, right? And intention. Set your intention. Do this. It's a great idea. But you want to give that intention power? Know what you mean by it. Know why you believe what you believe. Know why you feel so strongly about what you feel strongly about. And go with that, because when you are able to feel into that and you can set that intention, that's the one you're going to follow. That's the one that you're going to have success with. And I think when you look at something like integral theory, as you mentioned, pulling all these elements together, what you end up with, the theory is the parts, okay? Integral practice, integral life practice, an actual thing is how you do your life. Wouldn't you like to be a little more conscious about how you're going to do your life rather than just let it come at you and adopt whatever and then apply it? I think one of the reasons why I think people are struggling right now is there's a lot of help out there and a lot of help available. And there's some really incredible quality help I've seen, especially on LinkedIn. I see things that it's like, these people are amazing what they're putting out there. Yes. And one of the challenges is if you're coming from a place of suffering, that's not going to be so easy to choose, because if you don't know what you believe and why you believe it, if you don't know what motivates your heart, which is very common, nobody's wrong for that, right? Then how are you going to be able to choose effectively? And one of the reasons why I think people don't finish programs when they start them, you know, they'll invest in these big expensive programs and they don't finish that is because they don't really know how they feel when they're making a choice. You know, growth is process, and that's not going to stop. That's going to last our entire lifetime. And there are ways that we can make it work, or there are ways that we can force ourselves, and maybe it'll stick and maybe it won't. But when you have awareness of things like your neuro-linguistic programming, how your words frame your world, and integral theory, how it all comes together, and you apply things like coaching, like psychology, like, you know, some people definitely need therapy, support that. Then you have a better chance of moving forward and having the vibrant life you're seeking. At least that's my opinion.
Actually, that is fantastic. And I love how much you took on your journey at the time to connect the dots. And one of the things that I'm seeing, it's important to have a self-discovery. It's important to know ourselves in different stages in life. Obviously, versus 20s, 30s, 40s. and then obviously in years to come, 50s, 60s, every decade of our life, it's extremely pivotal and transformational. We change every single day. Question it is, are we going in the right direction? Is it congruent with what we believe and who we are and what we're passionate about, what we love, what we care for? So if we don't have those elements figured out, that's why we have so much. And I love what you mentioned, importance of therapy and the work you do as a therapist and through coaching and consulting world, because we have to have that alignment, right? When it's a disconnect, and right now we see magnitude of disconnect. People are miserable, people are unhealthy, people are having hard time adjusting, and as a result, succeeding in everything.
Well, you mentioned that people are definitely struggling, and gosh, it's so during something like this where we have absolutely no understanding of how to do it. There's no guidebook. Nobody has a guidebook on how to do this. And everybody feels powerless. And even those who say that they're not they're lying. And why are they lying? Because clearly there's an investment in maintaining the facade that says everything's perfect. And it's a terrifying time. And yet, dot, dot, dot. And yet, there's also opportunity, but opportunity not so much in I can build this and I can build this, that's there, but opportunity to go into a more organic place with the self and allows the self to grow and learn. I mean, how many people for the first time are really looking and evaluating their lives, their health, their values, who and what they really love? How many people have you heard have made these dramatic changes because they realize now is the time? One go around in this body, it's like now's the time. And I think when you access tools to be able to figure that out in yourself more, suffering decreases, ability to be of service to yourself and others increases.
And that is really interesting, and something that just wanted to, if you don't mind, go back to as I listen and you speak. You mentioned how major pivotal change and level of that force change happened in a way for so many after September 11th. And now we have a pandemic and we feel like we have another wave of that. And it's so interesting how force change, even though we dread it, kind of led us in this crazy, from being disoriented, not knowing where we headed, to I will pick up the ball and I will go and try it. I mean, everybody's acting and behaving in a different way, right? But it's so interesting that it's very little that proactive approach. And I usually come from that aspects, the way I was raised, where I was raised in Europe specifically, preventative, proactive, focused, on all of those different things. And then seeing now this fusion of so much crisis mode or so much pain and change from the pain, and being obviously having quite a bit of expertise in change management within the leadership. It's like why we have as a humans such, even though we know we should, right? But we don't till it's either too late or is this a breaking point that it's like, if I continue 1 second longer in this direction because I'm obese, I might die, or because I already have 4 or 5 chronic illnesses, I need to change my diet, or I need to exercise, or whatever might be the case, right? It's just so interesting in human behavior how much we are not willing proactively to work on. So I'm curious, how do you work with patients, or I mean, not patients, but clients that are trying to overcome some of the bad habits or things that they truly should change and wanted to change in order to foster that better quality of life and better career paths and more success and more fulfillment and more passion and frankly more health and longevity and energy and desire to actually do more as a result of how we feel in order to serve and help others, because we need to be in good shape ourselves, right, before we can actually do that for others. So do you mind please sharing a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. One of my favorite topics. It's interesting that you bring it up because as you were speaking, several things popped into my mind. And we can't serve from an empty vessel. It's not going to happen. You just can't. You can only do so much. I mean, if you're utterly exhausted and you haven't eaten and you haven't slept, how can you be congruent, meaning in alignment with what you're trying to ask somebody to do if you're not even applying it yourself? So I know for myself on a couple levels. To be a practitioner, I absolutely have to be congruent in what I say and do. And I'm committed to that. But I've been doing that for years. And it's interesting because you see a lot out there right now about getting up super early and making that morning work for you. And that's a beneficial tool if you're a morning person. So there's a lot out there. You see a lot of different coaching programs that like how to stay fit, do this, start this. Great things available. The bottom line is that for myself, if that wasn't in place, I probably would have been struggling, but that's been in place for years. And I had to up my game a couple of years ago. I went through a dramatic life change with the end of a relationship and I had to rebuild. And so I had to redevelop a lot of aspects of my life because there was a lot of pain that I had to work through and heal. And so I used the tools that I've always used as means of part of healing. And when I work
That is so powerful, Carrie. I just want to acknowledge that.
right?
And it's also, it leaves emptiness and leaves the void and beside the pain and need for healing. And we see so much of that happening right now. So I just wanted to kudos you for being able to go through that process in a healthy, transformational way, which I hope that everybody who's watching and listening, they can learn that we have to apply it. We have to experience it. It's not silver bullets. And it's not some quick fix that we just order on Amazon and it's instantaneously same day at your doorstep. Please continue.
Well, here's how I look at it too. And you're correct. It's not an instantaneous thing. I mean, when I was going into my split, I prepared for a month before we split. We had talked about it and I knew that it was going to be a matter of weeks. And so I prepared what my 6-month plan, and I know that sounds a little ridiculous, but I knew that was going to be one of the things to help me get through it. And so I'm very glad that I did that. And so once I was submerged into the feeling, couldn't miss that. I did all the work, and that set the foundation because that was the year before we got into lockdown. I was just coming out of lockdown,
wow.
or coming out of and going right into lockdown. So I was actually like, oh, I can handle this. And the only time that lockdown twice really kicked me was when they shut down the park that I go for a hike in every morning.
Okay, seems like we lost Carrie, so we'll wait for her to come back. As it is happening very often with technology and experiences that we're experiencing right now. So she is right back. Just quick back. Yeah, it's technology is being very interesting these days. So please continue.
Isn't it amazing that we actually get to use this?
Absolutely.
It's amazing. I went through this whole process and then go into lockdown and it was like, oh, more of the same. I know how to handle this. But part of the problem is that, my park where I hiked every day got shut down and then I wasn't prepared for that. And I'm like, okay, I can handle everything else shutting down, but as long as I can get into nature. And then I had to augment. And then I realized part of this process was going to be learning how to augment. And then I got sick. And then I had to deal with that as well. And I'm like, okay, got to learn how to augment. Now, one of the things in the initial question you asked was, how do I help people? And right now, the clients that I'm dealing with, everybody's coming with such a specific, succinct topic. And it's usually, a lot of it has to do with self-esteem and self-acceptance and how do I develop this? And I think a lot of people are starting to realize this downtime is good for developing these areas since nothing else is going on in a lot of ways. Maximize it.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, and one of the things that I'm doing is I'm working specifically on self-acceptance with people. I'm working specifically on cultivating that and then building a game plan in order to slowly and gently rebuild your life to fit the way that you want. There is tremendous information out there. There really is. I could name probably 100 programs. You probably could too, of great things that people are offering. What you need is you need a foundation before you go into that. I'm the foundation. I bring that so you can go into that later.
That is brilliant, and I love that you just mentioned that and how important it is. If you don't have a foundation, that's why people don't complete the courses, or if they do complete it, then don't start applying what they learned. If you're overwhelmed, why we have over 90% courses not completed, it's exactly that very, very reason. Because we want a solution, but we don't realize what we need to have in order. We don't understand holistically what other pieces of component needs to be there. Not only just decision that you want to make a change, but not jumping in, as they say, horse before the cart. You have to really know the process and steps. And if you miss steps, and I often experiment on myself, and I do make some missteps. I don't sometimes. I'll watch and look at all the instructions, and I do intuitively put a just whatever it is together. And sometimes it works, but sometimes like, oh, and now I understand why I have extra parts in my hands and that where they belong and why they should be there, right? In order to create stability. So I'm just using this analogy, which truly, literally just happened. But it's just sometimes you get too excited. I'm like, oh my God, I got this, right? But we can get a 90% done and right. But what if that 10% is the most pivotal, or 1% to move our trajectory forward? And that is what we're guys talking about. We know that you know how to walk and then do all this regular stuff every day, but is it the best serving, right? And is the most effective things to do and how to do it. That is the huge game changer right now. And that is where all of this happening, that takes that empowerment of knowing and driving force forward in the right direction, which builds your confidence, right?
You're on something, because that building the confidence to do it. And I wrote a note about this while you're speaking, because I thought self-trust is a really big part about that. And when I started looking at that for myself, after I had been through several different life changes, and I write a lot of inquiry, because the only way, an uninvestigated life is a life wasted. And I would look at, do I really trust myself? And I found in some areas I did, but the areas where I had this recent failure, or this thing that didn't work out, or this broken heart, or whatever, was I didn't trust myself after those situations. And I thought, why is that? And once I started to get to the root of those matters, all of a sudden, figuring out how to solve it became a lot easier. And so, looking deeply at the self is a crucial thing, especially in a time like now, because what do you want to be when all of this reopens? Do you want to come out and rage at everybody because you've been miserable the entire time? Or do you want to come out of it where you trust yourself to make good choices in spite of what life has given to you? The old saying, life on life's terms. We can't escape this. This is where we are. We're in it. Make it work or flounder or struggle and suffer. And, do you want to suffer anymore? I know I sure don't. I want to, even on the hardest days, I want to look forward to, oh my gosh, the sunrise. It's amazing,
That is fantastic, and as we've seen some slight improvements, right? In comparison what we experienced in 2020, we have a now great chance to also put that in application. Not only what we learn, but how we help others what we learn with, and what results we can see that are already happening. So do you mind sharing that? How is the situation right now in New York, and what do you see that is shifting and changing also in people's behavior, and obviously understanding so well psychology side of it, and how is now integral leadership coming together? Please, I would love to hear.
I'll talk about the New York metropolitan area, because it spreads out. I mean, you've got Connecticut and New Jersey and Staten Island and Long Island, and not just the heart of the city.
Sure.
And in different parts, it's being dealt with in different ways. And I think what it is that the more concentrated the environment is, the harder it is for people to deal with. I think you're seeing a lot of incredible disparities with racial challenges, with financial challenges, and I know you're aware of this, but women right now are really in trouble financially because their employment has been, in comparison to the male employment, has been absolutely decimated. And so you're going to see that more in urbanized area where there's a higher concentration of people. Plus, with what's going on with the inoculations and there's questionable behavior around that, but I think you're going to have that anywhere in the world right now, because wherever there is an opportunity to do something underhanded, people do it. That's just human nature, and people are in fear and they're looking to get what they can while they can. I see hope. I see people looking forward to the brighter day, and I don't mean that in a throwaway way. I mean that quite honestly, because if you don't have something to look forward to, then what is the purpose? And I think people are looking for the simple stuff like sunshine. We've had good weather for the last 3 days. We've got sun for the first time. The snow is melting. All of a sudden, everybody's in a much better mood.
Yes.
And you add that, it's the littlest stuff. You add that,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, everything becomes a little bit more manageable. And I think it's a hard time, and it is. And, people are still facing loss. Unemployment has dropped, thankfully, but to what degree, I don't know what's measurable and what's not, because it changes all the time. You've got people who are facing very real challenges with losing their homes and absolutely no money. They're absolutely relying on the stimulus. So we'll see what happens. But I think it's life in suspension for a lot. And I think for those who don't have that, I think people do want to help. I think they do want to make a difference. And that's what I've been witnessing, at least. I mean, I don't see everybody, but I
Sure.
see people who want to help. I really do.
And that's beautiful, because you see from your circle, and then also from your positivity and your outlook, which despite challenges, focus on what we can do versus what we can't, right? But I have to also say and validate that I see a lot of disadvantages for women, specifically as we're celebrating a month of March as a Women Month, a month of celebration of women and accomplishments by women. We also had a March 8th International Women's Day. And we definitely see different climates in different ways, how women feel and how they want to be supported. And as a result, how their power don't want to be miscrewed and misportrayed anymore. So that understanding, how do we understand that power, specifically for male dominant cultures and environments, so that it is not clashing and it's not conflict and it's not something to fear, but it's something to be celebrated, contributed, and included in diverse solution, because we know that everybody thrives better when we are diverse, and not only with male and female approaches, but way of thinking and problem solving and complexities that we deal, instead of butting heads and fighting. But social economic elements, the fear. One thing I'm finding, and I just wanted to highlight this, is when you're in such a duress and stress, it's very hard to think about what can I do and be positive, right? So climate, environment, and then that's how I feel like NLP comes so much in place. How do you make this shift? How do you even see possibility? How do you even see the glimpse of something that could be different than maybe current reality that is just temporary? How many choices we make on that temporary reality that really affect us for the rest of our lives? And how we impact people around ourselves, like family members, business owners. So it's just so many magnitudes of all of that. So I'm curious, I'm again, kudos for navigating so well yourself and helping others to do that. But what would be some practical applications that you would be recommending for people that are truly challenged with and struggling, as you mentioned, with loss, not only just partner or home and finance, but also identity, because it's all of a sudden I'm having way too many things at the same time. People are committing suicides, people are desperate, and they don't know what is possible. So what would you recommend someone who is really struggling in that regard?
Well, there's no blanket answer. And I want to first say, anybody who is struggling, there are people out there who absolutely will help you and will hear you and will support you. And if they can't get you to solve your problem with you, they will find somebody who will. There is real help out there. And I think what we need to understand is that it depends on where we are. You know, if we're at a tipping point, get the help that you can, get the emergency help that you can. And if you know somebody who is, you have a responsibility to help your fellow human being. If you're somebody who is just that midway and you're like, I just can't pull myself up, but I'm plugging in, I'm doing it anyway. There's this fantastic tool called discipline. And it's called disciplining your mind. This is not easy. This is not simple. It's not one and done. This is not something that you can say, I am going to do this and it's done. I'm so good. I feel great. And then the next morning you're like, the reality is discipline is a process. It's like lifting weights. It's like, you know, you're not going to build muscle the first day you lift a weight. You may feel like, oh, wow, I've done something. It hurts like crazy. But when you're dealing with discipline, the prime example with that, with mental self-talk, if you're going into a negative space, if you're going into a space that's not feeding what's best for your mental stasis so you can move forward, stop. And it's not simple in that it's not denying the reality and the potency of your emotion and your pain. What it is stop so you can breathe, so you can get to a point of awareness where you're present in the moment. Be here now. And you're in that moment to where it's like, okay, what's really going on around me? I'm on a call with Izabela. We're having a great conversation. I don't need to worry about anything but that moment. When you can teach yourself each time something comes up, where am I? What am I really doing? Is it going to be like this forever? And you can start to develop a way to speak to yourself differently. That gets traction. And before you know it, you're able to catch yourself. I am not saying it's easy because it's not. I mean, that voice can be vicious and brutal and it can tear you down, especially if you've come from environments that have fed that externally or internally or fed fears or fed low self-esteem to begin with. So, you know, start with the mental discipline of stopping that talk. Then follow up with work on being realistic about why your self-esteem is where it is. And this is not putting blame because I've done this work. That's how I understand it, you know, and understanding that and cultivating real self-esteem is not just about, I love myself. Yes. It's about developing that relationship with yourself because that's a relationship. It's not like, I love me, I'm going to do my hair today. It's no, you love yourself enough to turn off that nasty voice and replace it with quieter neutrality. And then once you're calm, feed it with something that's honest and clear. All right, so I'm 56 now and I've got some wrinkles. All right, but at the same time, I'm also confident for the first time in my life in a way that I've never been. So there's trade-offs and you can talk to yourself. You get to know yourself in that way, you're going to be able to deal with it a lot easier. It's not going to be a one and done, and I think we need to put that down as a culture and thinking that it's like, hey, take my program and you're going to be great. Well, yes, if you do it for 6 months every day, you might be, but it's not a one and done anymore. And we don't have that luxury and we won't. We're just not. Things are too different now to have that luxury. So we've got to be real about it. But if we start with the smaller stuff, I can manage stopping the nasty voice in my head. I can be like, stop. You know, would you speak that way to somebody? Probably not. So why are you speaking that way to yourself, you know?
That is excellent point, and specifically generationally how we're raised and from cultures that we come. One thing that is very universal and global, that the role and how is a woman integrated in that setup, right? Generationally, and specifically now highlighting the back to be this energizing force. How do we change that, right? And how do we change the script? How do we get to enough of self-awareness to say whatever I was born into or raised with that doesn't serve, that doesn't support, that doesn't put me on an equal playing field, I have a choice and opportunity to change the script and an empowerment behind it to really do so. And empowerment comes, of course, within ourselves. But I also love this, just like this beautiful collaboration with like-minded individuals, with people who have your back, who really have a genuine interest in your success, with people that want to support you, the people you should be asking and finding out. And identifying who are they, right? Because we have more than ever now need also collectively, as we have a need to have a collective community of leaders with specific niches and expertise like yours or like mine, like everybody else's, because we can deal and do be as wide, as deep at the same time. It's impossible. And I love that you address that, because complexity in life, there's also complexity in business solutions. And that's why it's important to niche that out and own it and hone it. And as a result, really be able to make it exceptional results.
I agree with you. I agree. And one of the things is I think we've got to stop being afraid to feel.
Yes.
We be totally okay with if we feel bad today. That doesn't make me any less a great business person, any less a great leader, or it doesn't mean that I still don't know all my skills and my craft. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to be really good at what I do. We're going through a crazy cultural time on so many levels, and not for anything. We need to question where that information comes from. Like if somebody's bombarding us with really toxic information, we don't have to believe it. We don't have to buy into it. It doesn't mean it's not easy. I mean, gosh, the internet is filled with toxic
Yes.
hating. And
Yeah.
I can't comprehend that. It's like, what is the purpose of this? And, it's not true. It's like, you don't know me. You know nothing about me. How can you make that kind of assessment? And, and you look at that, and there are other problems that are much deeper than that. But it can start with our own awareness of saying that that's not true about me. You're making stuff up based on this, what you think about me, because you're ignorant. And we've got to start loving ourselves enough to do the hardcore work that we need to do in order to move forward. And if, there's, what is that, the tipping point? Once we get a certain amount of people, we'll be able to tip in the direction of clarity. That's my hope.
Yes, 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 yes. Because we're still in some phases in early adoption, and some people that are ready, and some people that are in such a either pain or proactively ready to make that leap. But then, as you mentioned, tipping point is not there yet. It's coming, and I really hope comes sooner, because it's just such a huge game changer who you associate with, who you work on a daily basis, and how much fun you have, how much you enjoy the life. Life should not be enjoyed after the work, and then you have a little bit of time, and then when you're tired, beaten down and exhausted, and you're like, I don't have the energy to eat, let alone to go and do something. Those things really are taking over, because we've seen severe level of burnouts, we've seen severe level of exhaustion. People just don't have no energy anymore. How do you energize? That is also the other aspect of this conversation. And how you energize is by letting go of things that don't energize you, and right? And what else would you add, please?
It's so huge. And I think, and I know you understand this, that each of us is going to energize in our own way. It's like how other people do it. I couldn't do it. There is no way I could do it. But I have found what works for me, and I stick with that because I know that's going to work. I know that when I go to the woods super early in the morning and I see deer and I watch the sunrise, and I walk in the first snow of the year, and I watch the green leaves start to come in. That gives me something. That gives me something so huge and so organic that I can't even put it into words. That energizes me. Doing yoga, doing some hardcore martial arts does it too. But we have to look in terms of, for each of us, this is again going back to our self-knowing, is that if we can go back to that place inside of ourselves and figure out what brings that to us, even if it's the littlest thing. You mentioned something the other day about making yourself happy. Don't wait. And God, we got to stop putting it outside of ourselves and look inside and go like, all right, what do I need today? And sometimes it's texting a childhood friend about, do you remember what candy we used to eat? I did that the other night, and somebody I've known since I was 4. And, and that brought me a lot of happiness, and I know it brought him a lot of happiness too. And, it's our little things, and it's about taking the time to just sit back. What is my little thing? What is it going to be today?
I love it. And it's so true. All the happiest moment when we think about our being around the small things and small, most precious memories that we create and establish with someone else in our life, personally or professionally. And something that we enjoyed, something that was fun, something that we learned, something that exhilarated us, that make us excited. Because even the self-discovery path, that is super exhilarating and exciting, but more than anything, when we share and when we show that we care, it's amazing what is possible. So with that in mind, Carrie, how do you spend now with everything that is going on in New York and that is things a little bit loosened up, time to energize and accelerate yourself in New York?
Well, we've got the new season coming. I'm looking forward to the nice spring weather, and that energizes me. And I also look at, I'm always looking to learn something new and something different. And I think we're in another phase of learning anew, right? The next phase of coming out of and through this last part of the pandemic. I mean, it's not the last part. We don't know what this is going to look like. But I
Yeah.
think that if, again, going back to it, it's like I'm looking forward to what's next, whatever that's going to look at. I've never been so caught up in not worrying about what to do next. It's been great. I haven't worried about it.
But I love that. It's you know what season is coming. You know that it's going to be longer days, brighter, more sunshine, more opportunity to do things outdoors. But taking every day at a time, and that's where all the pressure goes down. We don't have to do anything right now. We're not in the crisis. We don't have to take all the problems at once and collapse. We don't have to carry elephants on our shoulders, right? And
Oh,
suffocate ourselves. We just have to again do the highest priority for that day, for the moment, and the rest of it, it's fun, enjoyable, exciting things. And then I honestly, that's kind of how I practice. I learn how to shift the gears, and to help me tremendously, because and everybody's like, how you can be happy amidst of all of this. Like, first of all, it's not my first rodeo, but second of all, I mean, what can I do? What can I possibly do? And then when you find what you can do, keep doing that, because that gives you more, I guess,
yes.
acceleration to move forward, like doing podcasts, like doing these live shows, like building community of amazing legacy leaders like yourself, Carrie, and an opportunity to have these conversations and genuinely look at and have a conversation from different parts of the world. It's just so much disinformation around what's going on, where specifically New York, and controversy. And it's just like, how about having just the dialogue with somebody who is there and breathing, eating, and spending time in the city, and can share and shed light from different perspectives, and as anywhere else in the world. So I think we have a great opportunity to share more, tell more stories like Carrie just shared, and vulnerability of like, how do you pick up your life after something did not go well, and how do you start over, and how do you tap into, because you, guess what, guys, you have strength. You know that you can. You just need to let yourself to do it and believe in yourself. And
Oh, yes, yes.
anything else that you want to share in the closing? Because this was absolutely wonderful
Oh,
opportunity to have a
it
conversation with
was
you. And
utterly enriching, and I knew that it would be. In closing, enjoy your life. Everybody really, we've got one go around in this body, and look for the beauty in the tiny things. And sometimes it is tiny things, and then the next thing you know, the next day it's going to be two tiny things, and then after that it's going to keep building. And it's hard for everybody. And nobody's doing it perfectly, no matter what they say. Nobody is doing this perfectly. And
no
if
matter
they're
what they put on
pretending there
social media.
are, well, and you know what? And if they're pretending there are, stand back from that, because honestly, that's dishonest. And to be dishonest in a time where nobody should be, It says something. It's, gosh,
Yes.
put down the perfectionism and embrace the differences and the chaos and be like, what can I learn from this? And it doesn't have to be something that's going to make you a brainiac, but like, wow, I didn't expect that person to be so beautiful and wonderful, and look what they're bringing. I mean, they're doing a beautiful thing. And sometimes it's the tiny stuff, man. Probably more the tiny stuff than anything.
I love it. And opportunities again to share honest, transparent, and tell the stories, help others, because everybody can learn from each other and each story, because every story, every experience has a value. And more we share, more we learn, more stronger and healthier as not only as individuals, but as a team, as a company, as a country, as a nation, and overall as a world we will be. So guys, I hope you taken some notes here, because Carrie shares so many golden nuggets and very simple, actionable ways how you can not only energize, but be empowered and move forward, specifically as a woman in countries where you are lacking so many elements. And we're fortunate to be raised in environments, even though it's not perfect by any stretch, I mean, of imagination, but we are doing the best we can, and we're also collectively making the shift. So I'm glad to hear from you, Carrie, and making that shift together, and having opportunity to really see and tap into your wisdom and your experiences. I'm sure from your years in television and broadcasting, and dynamics and people and instant feedback and comments and commentary, how it's easy now in social media to put things out, but be conscious, be aware. Is it meaningful? Is it true? Is it impactful? Is it going to really serve purpose? Is it going to help make somebody better? If not, it's not worth it. So don't be a bad person. We have plenty of people that are already doing that. Be better, because we know you can. Every single one of us can be better.
Bravo. That's amazing. It's so true. It's so true. We can elevate ourselves. We can do it. We can do it.
And you're already doing that. So again, Carrie, absolute pleasure. And this is, guys, to be continued. We'll have a Carrie back. We'll be doing a lot of different panels in the future, some cool stuff that I will be disclosing soon. But buckle up, because things going to get very quickly, very, very fast paced. So whoever is ready, come on, join. Otherwise, you will be left behind. And we don't want to left anybody behind, Carrie, right?
No, heck no.
So please check her profile. We'll have a link. Please share any link, Carrie, that where people can find your tremendous work, where they can find and have a consultation around your NLP work that you are so beautifully doing.
Find me here on LinkedIn and reach out, and I will give you information toward my website, and we can keep talking. So I'm glad to be of support. Really, we'll keep the lines open.
That is fantastic. Again, guys, check again, Carrie. If you're not connected with her, reach out to connect. Ask her about her work so that she can give you guidance and help, so you don't have to do it alone, and you can expedite your curve. And also be in touch and check what she will be doing in months to come, and then how we're building an amazing community of powerful, integral legacy leaders. Have a great one.
Thank you, Izabela. You are awesome.
Likewise. And again, I want to thank you, Carl, Abu, Stuart, and others who were commenting and engaging. Wish you all a fantastic day. Stay safe and be well. And talk to you soon. Cheers.